Kuczek, attempt cruel, inhumane trial to publicly cause this animal KUC, ZEK, cruelly and inhumane attempt to cause my own death. You see, how important is this to the public? Law enforcement is one of the two most important tools to the people. The law is so important because God gave us two instructions. Number one, be subjective to the governing authority. Number two, respect the law. You subject yourself to the governing authority because the governing authority is the one who makes the law. And the authority to make the law by the governing authority was given by God Almighty. You respect the law because the law was made by those who was given the authority by God Almighty. Those that God expects you to subject yourself to. The governing authority must be fair. The governing authority must be lawful. The governing authority must respect the law because you cannot expect the people to respect the law that was written by a governing authority that does not respect the same law they write. Law enforcement officers must respect the law. How can you expect people to respect the law if those who give a badge to enforce the law, if the law enforcer has no respect for the law? Peter, Kuczek. I write it down in chalk. And zero respect for the law. Zero respect for the law. A 22-year detective says that he used a statement from an individual statement on March 30th, 2023. That individual, after her neighbor dropped off a meal at approximately 2:40 p.m., he sat down at a table in his living room and ate that meal. And at approximately 2:45, he got up to smoke a cigarette, traveled from the living room where he was working, doing a letter, and the Mac that was dropped off yesterday. Out, and there was a Mac that was in the front that was dropped off yesterday. And when we did 100 feet up by Mr. Mario Greco. And on this Mac, which Mr. Greco still works, there's no lights, there's all this set up here. Trying to keep it from dark, but on this Mac, I will bring it over here. I believe that the Mac will show time and date. And I believe on this Mac that was involved in the flight, you will most likely be able to uncover the date and the time of the letter that I was writing to Prime Minister Mark Carney and Premier Doug Ford, asking them and questioning why they did not acknowledge that 450 days after the 90-day legal limit to legally secure the office of Toronto Mayor that appointed Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow has not yet legally secured the office of Mayor because she and the City of Toronto was a defendant in Canada's highest court against applicants, myself, Mr. Kevin Clark, on behalf of the people, contesting her election and appointment. Now, That was happening on March 30th, 2025. So Peter K.U.C. Z.E.K. was a real detective. And he was investigating if myself had committed a crime. Peter would have gotten that information from me, would he not? He would have known that at 2:45 p.m. on March 30th, 2025, that I was the applicant in Canada's highest court on behalf of the people versus Canada's largest city, Toronto, on behalf of Olivia Chow, contesting her appointment to the office of Toronto Mayor as an illegal act under, I believe it's section 286, I believe. I'm not sure the section of the Provincial Municipal Elections. That's number 1 point in the case that Peter K.U.C. Z.E.K. violated Canadian Charter of Rights that stated you cannot charge someone without reasonable cause. And there was no reasonable cause, but we will get into that in a bit. Now, 2:45 p.m., after the excellent meal, again, from the same neighbor who you're going to meet today. Because even though my sister invited me to dinner, they will not be staying for it. They threw away all my property. They threw everything to get rid of the evidence that showed that Peter broke the law, that Housen broke the law, that the fire marshal, who they say investigated, broke the law. Yep, they took all my possessions. 61 years of life. Even all the stuff from when I used to be a grade 5 student teacher over 40 years ago. My glasses, my dentures, and everything. They just threw everything in the garbage because we made it aware that the evidence was there. But they didn't expect this to still be there. And whether it's still there on the Mac or not, we have more than concrete evidence to show that this former detective broke the law deliberately. And we are going to go through things piece by piece. There would be no sense of me seeking vengeance, because vengeance belongs to God. There's no animosity from me towards this individual. This is simply being put forth in the interest of the people, that I, a person who believes in God, expect to do the same as God instructed them to do. Respect the law. This individual, any cop that decides to lay criminal charges against someone without any motive and with 99.9% possibility that stated that it did not commit this criminal act. Reasonable cause, reasonable doubt. When there's beyond reasonable doubt at the start of you laying these charges, a police officer cannot lay these charges because you're expected to prove the case without a reasonable doubt. And if there's more doubt than there's reason, you cannot lay these charges. This corrupt, most likely corrupt. The word incompetent, as came up to describe K.U.C. Z.E.K. But the ability of saying this 22-year detective is beyond incompetent, that poses a little issue here. Because I heard yesterday that he was promoted to the head of the division. So we're gonna mention the incompetence, but we're gonna focus more on the corruption and the criminal allegations and the criminal charges that we expect to be laid, because we have agreed beyond reasonable doubt we can prove that. The incompetent poses a problem because for me to label him as incompetent, beyond incompetent, is to create a snowball and open up a Pandora's box. Because if he's beyond incompetent in this case, and it was not just an attempt, cruel and inhumane act against me and this animal, if it was not just abuse of the law, and all the things we're going to bring up here, to say is beyond incompetence is to say we must call in the federal level of government to take over the law interim. Because if it's accurate, I was told yesterday that he was promoted to the head of the division to a staff sergeant, then the whole police force is beyond incompetent. Because though he is beyond incompetent and not just corrupt and just a criminal, then the ones who would appoint somebody who would deliberately and blatantly break the law to the head of the law. Wow, imagine that. What would you call somebody who promotes somebody who's been proven to be beyond incompetent to the highest position in the police division? You'd have to say that they are not beyond incompetent. They are beyond totally incompetent. You understand what I'm saying? If this person, if we are not focusing on the corruption of Peter K.U.C.Z.E.K. and focusing on the concrete evidence we have that he deliberately broke the law, and if we try to pass off that he's incompetent and he did not commit a criminal act and did not violate the Police Service Act, then we have to say, hold it. Then who appointed him? Because those who appointed somebody who would be so clearly beyond incompetent, if incompetence was the case, then they have to be beyond incompetent. We are going to look at the incompetent part, but also to focus on the incompetence, which we have to be transparent, is to also say we have to investigate all the cases that this individual has investigated and tried in 22 years as a detective. Because if he is incompetent 22 years after being passed on to a detective, imagine what he was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 19 years ago, 21 years ago. But we will address all that issue. But let's talk first about the crime and the allegation. The only evidence that was put forth to the police, the only statement made by Mr. Kevin Clark was that I got up, I lit a cigarette, and on the way to the bathroom, I inadvertently stopped. Blew out the smoke, and there was a smoke sensor above me. The alarm went off. When the alarm went off, I figured it was from the cigarette smoke. I opened up the bathroom door. I took a puff, put out the cigarette. I walked across to the living room, and in turn, there was a desk right here. Picked up a CD off the desk, walked over, and I fanned out until there was no more sound. After the alarm stopped, there was another scent that mattered. I smelled something. And what I smelled didn't smell right. So in turn, I went towards the hallway and I opened the door. There was no smell. I knew what the smell was. I walked back towards the kitchen where we normally had to use the stove for heat. Nothing's on in the kitchen. So at that point, I looked towards the room And we reenacted the doors closed. An individual who used to live on the 21st floor, 2117, I believe it was, wife had died. And within a few days after his wife died, I was just kicked him out. Told him he had to leave right away, even though he was on the lease previously. I met him downstairs. He had that flesh he used to be in my head. I put him through a different part of the routine to make sure that he's somebody who was in need. And in turn, it was freezing cold outside. I couldn't let him go outside. So I let him access the room and use the room and taking care of my two animals, my two kids. There was a couch in the corner here where he normally sits. That socket wouldn't look like this, would rattle off. There was a small bed I put here and the couch over there. And that was it. Stuff was in the closet. Now, that door was closed. When he had walked the dog, when he was coming back, I was to go downstairs. When I came back, I saw the dog. So I went right to work on my desk, realizing he had gone to school. So when I smelled something, I knocked the door. Oh, no. Stop it! Hey, down! I'm reenacting. Paul. And when I opened the door, it was like, Edison, be quiet, please. When I went to open the door, I tried to push the door. Boom! Tsunami of black smoke coming from just in God. And it was like watching a movie. It's like, wow. Just, I'm screaming, Paul, and I was all black, all the way to about here. I saw underpass under there. I descended back this, so I was going to crawl under. But then just when I tried to crawl under, suddenly there was a spark. And at that point, I backed up and I hit myself a bunch of times, figuring I was dreaming. Oh my God, the frick, I wouldn't wake up. At that point, I just went, Paul, no answer. So at that point, I came here. Dog, Hennessy, out. Dog came. Dog went out. I went, so I had my clothes on, I went over here. That's why I ran up there to that small stench. And then came back towards the door, and I got towards the door here. It was so much smoke that I thought this thing wouldn't work. So I went through this exit here. Bang it a bunch of times, finally started to work. And I was blowing, it was all smoke and so forth. So I had to abandon it, ran down the stairs, informed everyone there was a real fire, and to get out. Then from there, I ran down to see Andre on the 7th floor. He didn't answer. So then I went to Shannon, and I dialed on the screen that Paul, I think Paul is dead, and I asked him to contact Mary of Greco. That's story. This is part one. That information that I gave to the police, Khrushchev, who is the detective, I was told by Paul Keaton that Khrushchev didn't even come up to the end. That information was told to him by the officer who I told it to. And in turn, Khrushchev altered it and fabricated to say, Mr. Clark, with a cigarette. The charge is arson. So Khrushchev was a legend that lit a cigarette. Keaton already acknowledged that he closed the bedroom door. The fire marshal, everyone already acknowledged the fire was in the bedroom. Khrushchev is acknowledging that I lit a cigarette in the living room, took that cigarette, opened the bedroom door with my two animals in, deliberately started the fire so I didn't just throw the cigarette in, because if I throw the cigarette in, I wouldn't know the fire was going to start. So what he said is, I opened the door, went to one piece of the furniture and deliberately started the fire, came back out. And between two, closed the door, wait for it to start burning, and then I changed my mind. So I ran and grabbed the smoke sense detector. And then I run back here and open the door and try to put out the fire that had started with a cigarette. And that's arson. And that was grounds for creature. Threatening my dog, driving for me, and get me all agree. Not to go even 500 meters in my home, or just send the dog to you in society and put her down. This is part one in the criminal case, not a corruption case, against Peter, Petr, KUC, ZEK, 3 Division. And it's clear that using only my statement, altering it, and fabricating an allegation, it is already clear that Krutek did break the law. He is a criminal. And he should face criminal charges. For the attempt murder, attempt manslaughter, minimum, cruel and inhuman treatment of a human and an animal, but also obstruction of justice, laying false criminal charges, fabricating evidence, and total disregard and disrespect of the law that he was hired to enforce. This morning I called an individual, badge number 66118, to start this case. He was very unprofessional, giving me grounds to believe that Krutek may be the head of this division. Because he said, what do you want? He didn't say, how can I help you? How can I serve you? When I asked him a question, he was, yeah, not yes. He was very rude and very unprofessional. So, just by that encounter with this individual, I tend to believe that this individual who had given me the information did not lie. And if he did lie, then we will file a claim against him. But police officers are not allowed to lie. With the actions of this individual, 66118, yeah, what do you want? Refusing to answer the question, as if he was above the law. I tend to believe that the individual yesterday may have been right. Corrupt, criminal, disgraced criminal detective, Peter, K-R-U-C-Z-E-K, may have been promoted to the head of one of Toronto's police division. Can you imagine that? Wow. Alleged criminal. Alleged crooks. And this, without any, this has been going on since March 30th. All these allegations were filed against this individual. With the police, with the city. And if he's been promoted, are you saying that you ignore allegations of criminal acts and corruption against this individual and then promoted him? How can you do that? That's unlawful in Canada.